Constantinople, 1453 AD. What happens when a 1,000-year-old empire refuses to die quietly? When a teenage sultan with a cannon the size of a school bus decides to rewrite history. And when a rogue Albanian warlord named Skanderbeg turns into the ultimate guerrilla ghost. Welcome to the most dramatic siege of the medieval world, the fall of Constantinople, 1453. How did a city once called the Queen of Cities end up farming inside its own walls? Why did Europe ignore its cries for help like unopened DMs? And what made Sultan Mehmed drag ships across land like a man possessed? From the stubborn walls of Constantinople to the wild ambitions of Mehmed II, from Murad II's failed chase of Skanderbeg to the final stand of Emperor Constantine II, this is not just a siege. It's a saga of betrayal, brilliance, and the brutal birth of a new world. So grab your sword, your popcorn, and your sense of historical wonder. Because this is the story of how the medieval era died, how the Renaissance was born, and how one cannon changed the course of civilization. Once upon a time in the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was like that one elderly neighbor who refuses to move out of a crumbling mansion. Constantinople, once the glittering jewel of Christendom, had become a shadow of its former self. Its population had shrunk to a modest 50,000 to 100,000, and inside its mighty walls, farmland. Yes, the city was so empty, they were growing cabbages where emperors once paraded. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire was like a teenager who just hit a growth spurt, hungry, ambitious, and ready to take over the neighborhood. They had tried to knock on Constantinople's door several times before, but each time something got in the way. Crusaders, civil wars, rebellions, or Timur the Lame showing up like an uninvited party crasher. Murad II was no slouch. In 1444, he crushed the European Crusaders at the Battle of Varna, where King Vladislav of Poland and Hungary got a one-way ticket to the afterlife. This left Central Europe in a royal mess. But Murad's problems weren't over. He still had to deal with Skanderbeg, the Albanian lord who had once been an Ottoman vassal, but now played guerrilla warfare like it was a video game. Murad sent not one, not two, but 3 punitive expeditions against Skanderbeg, and all 3 got ambushed and humiliated by the outnumbered Albanians. It was like watching a cat outsmart a pack of dogs every time. Murad also had to deal with rebellions and a campaign in the Despotate of Morea in 1446. There, he forced Constantine XI, the future Byzantine emperor, to become his vassal and pay tribute. That's right. Before Constantine XI was defending the walls of Constantinople, he was writing checks to the Ottomans. Murad tried again to squash Skanderbeg at the Battle of Svetigrad in 1448. He won a minor victory, but chasing Skanderbeg was like trying to catch smoke with a net. So Murad left a few garrisons and went back to Edirne, probably muttering, "I'll get you next time, Skanderbeg." Enter John Hunyadi, the voivode of Transylvania and part-time letter-writing enthusiast. He begged the Pope and European kings for another crusade, but they all ghosted him. So he raised a 30,000-strong army himself and marched toward Kosovo in 1448, hoping Skanderbeg would join him. Spoiler, Skanderbeg didn't show. Maybe Đurađ Branković blocked him, maybe Ottoman garrisons slowed him down. Either way, Hunyadi was left hanging. On October 17th, Murad II arrived with 50,000 troops at the same field where his ancestor Murad I had fought the First Battle of Kosovo. The battle began with a bang. Hunyadi's forces charged across the front, and for a moment it looked like they might win. But the Ottomans pushed back. That night, Hunyadi tried a sneaky flank attack with light cavalry. The Ottomans said nice try and repelled it. On day 2, Murad pulled a classic move. He ordered his flanks to retreat, tricking Hunyadi into attacking the center. The Crusaders pushed forward until they hit the Janissaries, the elite Ottoman troops, who were basically the Navy SEALs of the 15th century. Then the Ottoman flanks returned, encircled Hunyadi's forces, and turned the battlefield into a meat grinder. Hunyadi escaped, but more than half his army was wiped out. The Ottomans lost around 5,000 men, but the Balkans, they lost their future. With the Balkans broken and Skanderbeg still playing hide-and-seek, the road to Constantinople was finally open. Murad II passed away, and in 1451 his son Mehmed II took the throne. He was just 19, but he had one goal: take Constantinople or die trying. By the mid-15th century, Constantine XI Palaiologos was the Emperor of Byzantium in name, but in reality, he ruled a glorified coastal suburb. The once mighty Byzantine Empire had shrunk to a few patches of land around Constantinople, and even those came with a monthly invoice from the Ottoman Sultan. Yes, Constantine had to pay tribute to Mehmed II, the young and ambitious sultan who was basically binge-watching conquest documentaries and taking notes. Constantine hated this arrangement, so like any good medieval schemer, he threatened to support Orhan, Mehmed's cousin and potential rival to the throne. It was the 15th century version of saying, "I know your family's secrets and I'm not afraid to tweet them." Mehmed, not one to take royal shade lightly, tore up their treaty like a bad prenup and declared war. But first, he did what any smart conqueror would do. He made sure no one else would crash his siege party. Mehmed signed treaties with Venice, Genoa, and Hungary, essentially saying, "Hey, I'm about to do something big. Don't interfere, and I'll make it worth your while." With the Karamanids stirring up rebellion in Anatolia, Mehmed crossed over, stomped out the trouble, and consolidated his power like a boss. Then came his masterstroke. In April 1452, he ordered the construction of Rumeli Hisara, a fortress on the Bosphorus so intimidating it made Constantinople's defenders break into a cold sweat. The fort was finished by August, and it was like putting a padlock on the city's back door. No help was coming from the Black Sea. Constantine XI, realizing the Ottoman Netflix series How to Siege a City was entering its final season, began stockpiling supplies, pulling his people into the city, and sending desperate DMs to European monarchs. Despite Constantine's pleas, most Christian monarchs ghosted him. They were too busy with their own drama, wars, debts, and existential crises. Only Venice sent a few ships, and Giovanni Giustiniani, a Genoese mercenary commander, showed up with around 1,000 soldiers. Think of him as the medieval version of a Navy SEAL with a really good beard. Mehmed rolled up with a force that could make any city tremble. 100,000 warriors, give or take a few thousand, who were probably just there for the loot. 69 cannons, including one so massive it needed 60 oxen to move, and took 3 hours to reload. 126 ships ready to blockade and bombard. Against this, the Byzantines had 7,000 professional troops, including 500 Ottomans loyal to Orhan. Awkward. A dozen cannons that were more vintage than effective. 26 ships, albeit better built than the Ottoman fleet. 30,000 locals pressed into service, most of whom probably thought they were signing up for a bake sale. The Byzantines weren't going down without a fight. They repaired the Theodosian walls, set a giant chain across the Golden Horn to block naval attacks, and divided the wall defenses among Italian commanders, with Giustiniani leading the charge. Constantine XI and his elite guard stayed in reserve at the Blochernae Palace, ready to jump in if things got spicy. April 1st. Ottoman vanguard arrives and starts camping like it's a medieval Coachella. April 5th. Mehmed himself arrives, probably humming a victory tune. April 6th, the giant cannons begin their thunderous work. But surprise, the walls hold. The cannons take forever to reload, and the Byzantines patch up the damage like medieval handymen. April 7th, Mehmed sends in light infantry and skirmishers. They get repelled like bad Wi-Fi. April 8 and 9, the Byzantines try a few sallies, quick attacks outside the walls, but achieve nothing except sore muscles. April 11 onward, the bombardment becomes relentless. The Ottomans hammer the walls day and night, hoping to wear down the defenders. April 17 to 18, night assaults begin. The Ottomans try to sneak in like burglars, but the defenders hold firm. So there it was, Constantinople, still standing, still stubborn, and still protected by a giant chain stretched across the Golden Horn, a medieval version of no entry signs for ships. The Ottoman fleet, despite its size and swagger, couldn't get past it. It was like trying to drive a Ferrari into a gated community with no remote access. Then, on April 20th, a few Venetian ships sailed in like backup dancers in a surprise concert. They joined the defenders, bringing hope, supplies, and a bit of Italian flair. Mehmed, watching from his camp, probably muttered, "Fine, you want drama? I'll give you drama." Enter one of the most audacious military moves in history. Mehmed ordered his ships to be dragged across land. Yes, land. Near the Genoese colony of Pera, the Ottomans laid down greased logs and rolled their ships like medieval IKEA furniture. By April 28th, the ships were floating inside the Golden Horn, behind the chain. It was the ultimate plot twist. Constantine XI, probably blinking in disbelief, launched fire ships to burn the Ottoman fleet. But the defenders lost that battle, and now they had a new problem. The northern wall had to be defended too, stretching their already thin forces even thinner. Some Byzantine cannons were moved to defend the harbor, but they were about as effective as throwing rocks at a tank. The Allied ships retreated to the harbor, and their crews joined the city's defense. It was all hands on deck, literally. Then came May 6th. The gates of St. Romanus, one of the city's key entry points, were smashed by Ottoman cannons. That night, Ottoman troops nearly breached the defenses, but Giustiniani, the Genoese commander with nerves of steel, rushed in and repelled them like a medieval superhero. On May 11th, the Caligarian Gate was damaged, and Ottoman forces surged toward the Blachernae Palace. But Constantine XI, still fighting like a lion in winter, pushed them back. Mehmed had had enough. On May 29th, he ordered an all-out assault. The city was bombarded like never before. Then came waves of light infantry, but Giustiniani and his men held firm. The walls didn't fall until they did. Mehmed's artillery finally cracked the gates near St. Romanus. He sent in 3,000 Janissaries, elite troops trained to fight like demons. The Byzantines held again, but the Janissaries took one of the towers and planted the Ottoman flag. It was the medieval equivalent of saying, "This is ours now." Then tragedy struck. Giustiniani was wounded and carried off the battlements. The defenders' morale collapsed like a house of cards. A few hundred Janissaries slipped through the breach, and the city's defenses crumbled. Citizens and soldiers scrambled to the docks, trying to escape. But Constantine V, the last Roman emperor, refused to flee. With his guards, he launched a desperate counterattack near the gates of St. Romanus. He was killed in the chaos, his body never found. And with him, the Byzantine Empire died. An empire that had lasted over 1,000 years, tracing its lineage back to Rome itself. The fall of Constantinople wasn't just the end of a city, it was the end of the medieval era. It sparked the Renaissance as scholars fled west with ancient texts. It launched the Age of Discovery as Europeans sought new trade routes to bypass Ottoman control. And it ignited centuries of war between Europe and the Ottoman Empire. If you've made it this far, you're officially part of the history elite. Don't let this be the last chapter you witness. Smash that subscribe button, follow our channel, and ring the notification bell like a Byzantine alarm. That way, you'll be the first to know when we drop more jaw-dropping tales of empires, battles, betrayals, and the warriors who shaped our world.